Never been spotted capping, always been all organic. My view is so panoramic, give me respect, I gotta have it. I never been close to average, now I mean I'm supposed to grab it. My view is so panoramic, all I see is holographic. See one of you, I had to laugh at, being one of you, I can't imagine. Check me out, I'm bag grabbing, I got me some bad habits. My city get hella active, but I love it with a passion. Money in my baggy pants, I look like I'm hammer dancing. My voice sound a little hoarse, I know, just call me Lil Sebastian. Why be put that pink on me, and now I think I'm Killer Cam. Inside my mind, I already put my future goals into the past tense, and they gon' keep on doubting until they see that I just made it happen. I ain't tripping, tell me what they gonna do, huh? I'm on a mission to get paid with the crew, ay. She like me, I got more flavor than you. She gon' give me a little sugar like a neighbor would do. Told her this, you gotta save her, can't save her. Independent ballin' like a major, my paper coming blue like a jaybird. My view is changing, I can't even see my neighbors. Never been spotted capping.
Oh, we're live. Welcome everyone to the Philadelphia Asian American Film Festival live stream. My name is Ryan and I'm a programming volunteer here with PAF. I'll be moderating today's filmmaker Q&A with the creators featured in this Place We Occupy showcase. We'll be taking audience questions, so make sure you type out your audience questions in the comments. So let's go around the virtual room and have everyone introduce themselves and their films. Amanda, would you please go first?
Hi, I'm Amanda Amnon Wong. I'm the director of 100 Joys, which is a short film about the East Chinatown neighborhood here in Toronto. And I'm from Toronto, Canada. Hello.
Lace?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Lace Huang. I apologize for my poor audio. I am the producer and the actor for a short film called Signal. This is a short sci-fi film about a father-son's venture into a VR game and reconnect through it.
Should I do it together with him since we're the same?
Please.
Yeah. So my name is Annie Zhu. I'm the director of Signal. This film originally is directed by 3 directors, but some of my friends, two other directors can't make it because they're already in China. We're both international students, and this is the film that we complete together during pandemic, and it's also like a farewell party. We want to make it short together, something to remember.
Asavari?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Asavri, and yeah, no worries.
Sorry,
I'm
Asavri.
I'm the director. I'm a director for New Normal, which is an augmented reality short film, and it's a film that was shot using a combination of AR, animation, and live action. And it's a story that subverts the limitations of digital intimacy to create a narrative about warmth, hope, and family. And I'm from India, but I'm currently based in LA.
Kacia?
Hi everyone, my name's Kacia. I'm the director of the short documentary Fugetsudo about the Japanese confectionery in downtown LA that's been there since 1903. I'm originally from California, but I'm based in DC now. Very happy to be here.
And Kaushal.
Hi, my name is Kaushal. I'm the director of the film The Miniaturist of Junagadh. It's a film about a blind miniature artist, and it's set in 1947 when India became independent and was partitioned in 2 countries. And it's about this miniature artist who has to migrate from India to the new country, Pakistan.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for introducing themselves and their films. So this showcase is obviously about everyone's personal attachment to place, how we move through them, how we think about them, how we share them with others. Can everyone talk a little bit about how their films explore the places featured and how they became a focus of the narrative?
I can start.
Yeah.
So my film was, like a couple of people here, also made during the pandemic. And just prior to making this film, my parents were supposed to visit me after many, many years from India. But just as they were about to, the pandemic hit, so all plans got canceled. And prior to their arrival, I was really, I had been sort of in the US for a long time, unable to travel due to a lot of immigration restrictions. So I was really hoping for this moment to reconnect with my family. But instead, I ended up making a film that sort of tied my personal experience of disconnection and reliance on digital technology, being an immigrant, to the experience that everyone was having during the pandemic, where everyone was sort of siloed and isolated and reliant on this one way of communicating, where you don't necessarily have context of what's going on in the other person's life, but that's kind of all you have to hold on to. So augmented reality kind of became my medium of choice, because I was limited in terms of the spaces that I had to work with. I was limited to shoot in my apartment and my immediate neighborhood because there were so many restrictions during the pandemic. And I felt like the film in some ways became a process for me to sort of kind of understand my experience and my emotions about moving spaces, and trying to sort of reconstruct my idea of home and belonging, with taking into considerations like the physical and creative limitations I had for making this film. So I tried to kind of use the medium to sort of superimpose my sense of home and belonging onto the space that I physically had access to.
I
Can I go
am happy.
next?
Oh, there. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. So the genesis of this film for me was I shot this film in my grandparents' house. It's a house that I grew up in. So it's an ancestral house that we had for about 100 years. And then it was going to be pulled down to make way for a skyscraper. And I wanted to shoot something in the house that I grew up in to record the memory of the house. So it just so happened that the story that moved me the most, that I decided to adapt, was also about a blind artist. And I set it in the partition when the protagonist, the blind miniaturist, is also losing his house and is has to immigrate to Pakistan. So, therefore, for me, it was a very personal attachment to the space. Uh, and also, my protagonist in the story is very attached to his home. And home in both the sense, home in the sense of the building that he is living in, but home in the sense of his country as well. And for me, the film also spoke about my idea of home, because home is not just the four walls that we live in, but it's also the ideas and values that we grow up with and that we cherish. And over the past few years in India, as in almost every country in the world, there has been this rise of intolerance. There has been the rise of right-wing ideas where people's citizenship has come into question, and whether and and who really belongs to a country is being questioned. So I felt this loss of home at the idea that a very tolerant and diverse country that I grew up in was becoming more and more closed and more and more majoritarian. So for me, it was also important to explore that idea in the film. So it was a personal connection uh, to a place that I felt home, but it was also a personal connection to the values that defined my own sense of identity for me.
Thank you. I believe Kaya was next.
Hi, yeah. I think the reason that I was drawn to make this film was so much about the place. So when I saw the title of the shorts block, it seemed very fitting. I've been going to Figetsudo for a long time, since I was young, and there was just something that drew me in about the store itself. And it's been there for so long in the middle of downtown LA, which my mom is from LA, and there's not a lot in LA that's that old. We're not, there's not a lot left that goes back to the beginning of the 1900s. And I felt there was just such a strong sense of community and memory held within the space of this store that I just wanted to kind of explore it. So that's really where the film started. And then as I was making it, I wanted to kind of make it feel like the audience had walked into the store and Brian had started telling stories, which is what happened to me, that he's just this wonderful storyteller, and you walk in and he kind of just, meanders around the story of the store and his family, and Little Tokyo is a community, which he's been a big part of kind of protecting it. And so I really wanted to keep that place intact throughout the film. And we do go for a little while to Heart Mountain, which we also filmed that in Wyoming. But in terms of the archive footage, that was one of the things that that was my challenge when I was making the film, was trying to figure out how to intertwine the history that everyone was talking about, and the present, that I wanted to kind of stay rooted in the present of the store. And so I started overlaying the archive onto the footage that I shot, to kind of layer in the past, present, and then we kind of talk about the future into the one place. So I think it's, anyone who's gone to Figetsudo, it really does feel like all of that is inherently like in every piece of mochigashi and every wooden drawer and every kind of label, and there's photographs everywhere. So it just has this amazing sense of place and community and memory all kind of wrapped up in that store. So yeah, all about the place. I think it's a great theme, and I love how all these kind of different stories intersect.
Thank you for sharing. Would Amanda like to go next?
Sure, I can go next. Yeah, it's so interesting to speak about your film, Kacia, because I feel so much of those same, emotions and concepts that I also wanted to kind of highlight in 100 Joys. So for those of you who don't know, in Toronto, there used to be an original Chinatown that actually was raised from existence when they wanted to build a city hall on top of it, which resulted in a large number of the people who have businesses there moving to a different spot, which is West Chinatown, and it is the larger and more well-known Chinatown in Toronto. Usually when people refer to Chinatown in Toronto, it's the West one. And so oftentimes the East Chinatown gets forgotten a little bit, and that's where some of a smaller pocket of the immigrants had moved to and established a Chinatown there around a butcher store that had started in the 1970s, and that's kind of how the community was built. So very much like it is about the place, and it's very much a place that in Toronto we have streetcars, and it's one of those intersections of streetcars that people always go past. Like a lot of people know the area but have not necessarily spent time in it. It's kind of an area where you go past to go to the east side, or you go past to go to a popular park just a little bit north of it. So I kind of wanted to have that feeling of as if moving through the space as a dream, but also getting to know these different places, not just by their name and location and the logistical things about them, but about the experiences of the people who live and who own these businesses, and moving through these neighborhood as maybe someone experiencing it for the first time with new eyes, where the sites are familiar but also not so familiar. And so answering the same sort of questions about memory and place, and what does that mean in terms of placing, our present in conjunction with our past and also our future. What is sort of the future of East Chinatown as it sort of has changed over the years, and the face of the Chinatown, East Chinatown, has changed over the years.
Yeah, thank you. And you?
Yeah, I'll go. So this film, as I mentioned, is actually a combination work of three directors. So my friends Bolin and Nick, we went to college together in here. We all from China. That's how we met. And because we're international students, so we only actually have 1 year to stay after studying, or we need to figure out like an artist visa or some other way to stay here. So during that time, basically like during pandemic we can't do anything, and it is the time to make decision. Okay, should we go back home or should we figure out a way to continue to stay here? So I think instead of like everyone, you guys have a very specific place, to talk about in this film is actually almost like a question, like what is the definition of home? Does it depends on how long you stay in one place, or like is it only the place you come from, you originally come from? Because we already stay here for almost like 6 years, and Bolin actually stay here since high school, like so almost 9 years. And every time we can only go back during summer break, winter break. We just have less and less friends over there. Mostly our friends are here. So we're constantly talking about, okay, what is the definition of home? And especially during pandemic, like everything's shut down. Our relationship is maintained by this online, by this virtual thing. So in this story, we kind of set up like a VR game, and we drive to Sultan Sea, and they have like very interesting art installation, like spaceship, really out there, and there's no people there almost. So by creating this VR world, we're kind of like discussing about we maintain the relationship, or having communication on something we created online. And we like it's actually this year because our family expecting us coming back during break, so they know we will see each other and we will have time to talk. And because the other two directors actually have a very complicated relationship with their family, so the conversation actually happened mostly online, and they're forced into this this space. They're just facing each other online, this image. So it's also like a reflection of the feeling, how like the awkwardness they have to like have the conversation, like just by sitting there doing nothing. That's why they kind of put more like action in this VR game. What if this is the future? It can happen because, well, like it have to be certain interaction in this virtual space to maintain this communication. Yeah, so this film is like a combination of lots of things, but it's, I think, to put it down into like a sentence, is definitely the exploration of how we call home.
Thank you. And Lace, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think Annie probably touched on a lot of stuff, so I'm good for this answer.
Thank you. So for the next few questions, I would like to dial in a little more specifically on each films themselves. So for both Fugetsudo and 100 Joys, they speak to different ethnic enclaves in the United States and Canada. Both films show how these neighborhoods can not only serve as a testament of certain communities and their culture, but also as a barometer of impending change. With Fugetsudo, they have withstood generations of changes in the neighborhood. With 100 Joys shows how Toronto's Chinatown has moved and changed and sort of morphed into its surroundings. So for both filmmakers, where do you see these communities going 10, 20, 50 years down the road? What would you like to see change or preserved?
I'll start. That's a big question. I think Little Tokyo is one of my favorite places in LA, and as you said, it's gone through a lot of changes, and there are certain streets that are very, there are buildings there that have been there for 100 years, and there are a few businesses that have been there, kind of these through lines. And I think they've kind of been anchors for the community as things have changed. And I think there's been different forces at work there. Downtown LA as a place, I think, is also very interesting, because most downtown areas of cities is where everyone goes, and downtown LA is kind of where typically historically people don't go. It's been kind of, as you're saying, Amanda, about kind of going through. It's someplace that, you know, it hasn't been a destination for the city of LA and the county of LA. And I think that has been changing, and that the kind of popularity of it as a new neighborhood has really pushed on the community of Little Tokyo because of rent prices going up. There's a metro being built now. So I know that there are concerns that small businesses that have been there for 50, 60, 100, 120 years will be forced out because rents will get too high. So there's that kind of gentrification squeeze on the community that I think, I hope they're able to hold on to what they have and to even grow, but it's definitely a concern for a lot of people. And I think the other thing for Little Tokyo is, you know, the Japanese American community has, you know, had to be very resilient over the last 100 years. After World War II, when the communities were, you know, everyone was sent to concentration camps. The Kito family was sent to Heart Mountain in Wyoming. You know, when they were released, everyone had to start over. And a lot of people did not return to Little Tokyo who were there before. The Kito family did, and they restarted their business, and that became something that held on to their culture and their religion. And so I think Brian is someone who has kind of, he reverted back into the culture in a way that some of his generation didn't, because there was a big push from their parents to assimilate and blend in. It's not, you know, not wanting to stand out of fear that something like that would happen again, where they'd be targeted. So I think in that regards, Little Tokyo has had to be very resilient. And I think there's a bit of a resurgence of kind of, you know, new interest again in the younger generations in kind of embracing their culture again. And, you know, Brian's son is planning to take over his business. So I'm really hoping that the generations will continue holding on to those traditions, and that Little Tokyo will continue to be a wonderful community in the center of LA. But there's definitely a lot of challenges. And that's something I wanted to, you know, bring into the film, that it's not just a happy story of a family that's had a business for a long time. It's been a story of great challenge against racism, against gentrification, you know, against just the struggle of keeping a business running, and that you have to be a pretty determined and resilient person to keep that going. So I really admire Brian for all of that.
Thank you for your response. And Amanda?
Yeah, I would say that one thing I wanted to, I guess, kind of think about in this film was how we see change. I think that there's definitely things that we are worried about, like gentrification and forcing sort of groups that have historically lived in one area to move away. But I do think that change inherently is not necessarily a bad thing, as we see things change and grow and evolve as people and neighborhoods grow and evolve. East Chinatown used to be mostly Greek immigrants before the Asian immigrants moved in, and sort of the people who were displaced from the original Chinatown. And even within East Chinatown itself, we see a very diverse sort of diverse groups of people who have moved in at different periods of time. You know, sort of first sort of Cantonese, and then we have Vietnamese, and then a lot more people from mainland China now. And I think that continues to keep the area alive, although with, you know, there's sort of more stores and things that have been shuttered and closed down. And one of the things we were worried about during the pandemic, of course, is how do these stores survive when they have to sort of close their doors. And I do feel quite comforted that some of them have been doing well. For example, the barbecue pork shop owned by Mr. Chung, he says that he's actually increased his sales through Uber Eats, which has been kind of awesome. So people have been, coming out and supporting the community. And I think that moving in sort of the years moving forward, we shouldn't necessarily try to stop change, but as long as that change is respectful and, in preserving sort of the memory and the heritage of where the history of Chinatown has come from, then we are still sort of keeping that memory alive and the memory of the people who have lived there and the stories that they have sort of shared with us in the film as well. So, for example, Mr. Wong from Wong's Ice Cream, it is a new store to the area, but he works with especially Asian-inspired ice cream flavors, which are inspired by foods that he grew up eating, that the people in his community grew up eating. So I think that there's obviously a good way to sort of move forward and embrace the change while also still keeping with Chinatown as a place as a landing place, right? Like a lot of immigrants land in Chinatown, like Chinatowns were created as places of marginalization, and to still be able to create space for newcomers and not sort of push them out of it in terms of an economic or physical way. And I do want to share really sad news that Wong's Ice Cream that was featured in the film is closing down in December. It'll have its last day in December of this year. So we're very sad about that, but we are very happy for Mr. Wong and his sort of next upcoming ventures, and he'll be very, very missed in the community. But I definitely think that the community is capable of change, and we shouldn't try to stop the natural change that comes with it, but rather, keeping with the memory and sort of as a single, like if you're just a person who is near the neighborhood, go and check out the stores. It just all takes this a couple visitors to walk by, creating sort of more foot traffic and things to the area, so that people know all the awesome, amazing places that are in your neighborhood. And I'm sure this applies to many other Chinatowns all over the States as well, not just in Toronto.
Thank you. And yeah, I think the dichotomy between your two films, one shows like one through line of a legacy business persisting for so long. The other shows like Charlie's butcher shop, which turned into a cafe owned by the same family, shows that despite like a literal change, the spirit of the community is still there, which I found the two ends of a spectrum to be both different but valid. So thank you both for sharing your perspectives on this subject. For Signal and A New Normal, while the limitations of the physical realm can often force you to confront your own personal experiences, as we have all witnessed this last year and a half, both Signal and New Normal examines the isolation of living in a place without the physical support of one's family. These are both very personal stories in relation to your personal life. So I would like to extend the question to the both of you, or the three of you. Has your family seen your films, and what kind of effect or reactions have they given to your projects?
I can go first if that's okay. Yeah, it's I don't know how sort of this sort of transcends like the South Asian community, but I imagine a lot of Asian American communities also have this struggle with having open communication with their families. Like it is quite hard to have like non-surface level direct conversations about like deep things with most parents. So for me, I find that not being in the same space with them adds like additional problems to sort of accessing that type of communication. And so I feel that weirdly a film is like an interesting way where you sort of step outside of yourself and step outside of your role as like a daughter or a sister, and you sort of take on like the director and filmmaker's role, and then you feel a little bit more comfortable approaching it almost like an outsider. So my film is made up of interviews that I had with my parents and my sister, conversations that I had over video call, and I felt more comfortable asking them things that I wouldn't typically ask in a conversation, and they felt more comfortable answering those questions that they wouldn't necessarily speak to me. I mean, they may not want to address them as parents, but they would speak to someone externally. Like it's a weird shift in dynamic. And so I found that a very liberating experience, that despite not having my family physically present, it sort of gave me this opportunity to look at our family dynamic and the sense of like the meaning of home and the evolving identity associated with like home and changing value systems through like an external lens, and be able to have those conversations. And because they knew it was for, you know, for like a purpose, they were more open to having those conversations, weirdly. So I feel like sometimes these mediums can help us like break down walls that feel a lot more difficult to sort of go past when you're just like in a relationship. So I was able to like access things from my family and access conversations that I wouldn't normally be able to have. So I feel like that's, even though it came out of like you know, a restrictive space and a challenging space, I think the catharsis that the film offered and the conversations that the film allowed me to sort of co-create with my family were like very valuable to me.
Thank you. Yeah, and you?
Yeah. So actually very similar. I think making this short film and actually sharing to the family opened up more conversation. And we received, well, the three directors, we received really different comments and opinions from our family. Like mom and dad are really different. Like Asian mom, they're like spreading it like on the platforms. They see like, this is my kids' work, and they're like, hey everybody, please, because we submit to some festival as well, and because through our mom spreading, we actually won like audience award. Like they watched the film and they said, wow, the VFX part is so cool, and they're like, I'm so proud of our kids. And then the dad is like, okay, they give some notes. They'll give notes like, oh, I don't like the sound design here, or you know, like what's the meaning of the plant. They will like dig in that kind of like very like specific question, like detail that, you know, like they were like avoiding, you know, what we're implying in this message, but they understand it. But I think after that, I'm actually very glad, because I feel like all of us are having more like open conversation with our father. I think it only take one side, because, you know, we constantly make phone call with them, make video call with them, and they like almost like training them to make them feel comfortable, you know, like having this kind of conversation. And yeah, I actually think it is like an improvement for our relationship as well. Yeah, so I'm very glad that we decided to make this project, and I think it's not that hard to like fix, you know, like something that you want to make it better. You just take some courage to like be honest about yourself, to be honest with them as well. Hey, I want more of your attention, and I want to say I love you, and I want you to feel okay to like receive that feeling as well. Like there's nothing awkward, even, you know, between the father and son, this kind of relationship. Yeah, I think it is normal to express our feeling.
Thank you. And Lace?
Yeah, I just want to add on to just like answering the question real quick. But you know, I had similar experience in terms of like how the film was supported and received by my parents, just like Enyi. But the funny thing is, they didn't even understand in the beginning what the VR thing is. Like the premise, they just did not get it. And then I have to explain to them how it was, what VR is and how these two characters were able to, be connected while they cannot, and then kind of hit them, and they were able to resonate with that a bit more because I'm also international. FaceTiming is also my main way of communicating with them, so definitely leave a mark, on them of their experience being portrayed and understood by their son. Yeah.
Yeah, and between the two films, I found it very interesting that you guys both decided to use AR and VR as sort of a middle ground between sort of families that are literally thousands of miles apart. With in Signal, the father's flying away in a spaceship, and in a new normal, your family's all over the place. But it is in the end sort of like that effort to make a connection that really makes a difference. That like um, common ground that you guys establish, which is very touching. And I'm glad that the film has such a positive effect, at least on your interpersonal relationships. Thank you guys. And for Kaushal, your film tackles the sort of the geopolitical implications, or like the very personal stories in the geopolitical split between India and Pakistan. It is obviously India independent is very celebratory, but also marred in sort of like its own complexities in terms of what is India, who can remain in India, like who deserves a place in this country. I think in particular, us at the programming volunteers had some questions in regards to the main character, the blind artist. As somebody who appears to be perhaps closer, he's not that old, I'm sure, but like closer to that era, what kind of like experiences do you feel like he was able to draw upon to really deliver on that devastating role of somebody who deeply wants a united country or a united community, like irregardless of political borders? And like, how do you go set forth in finding such an actor?
I think all of us grew up on our own personal experience. I mean, we didn't really have to dwell into history because what we see in the film is playing out even today in India. So we didn't really have to look that far. Uh, the actor is a very senior actor. Mr. Nasruddin Shah is actually a legend of Indian cinema, and he is not only one of our country's finest actors. He's also at the forefront of the fight for a lot of social causes in India. So although I so he in fact was he in fact has been very often he has to face vitriol uh, from from a lot of people because he's been very forthright in his views about the kind of society that India should be, uh, the the kind of tolerant India, the secular India that he grew up in, and those and the values that are ours. So I really feel that he and all of us, we did not really have to look that far into history. Although partition for many of us in my family didn't have to face it, but even after generations, it's always alive because we stay. The family structure in India is very closely knit. People don't move out of their houses, they stay in the same house with their parents, so they grow up listening to the grandparents' story about how they might have moved from India to Pakistan, Pakistan to India, if I mean they have had to face partition. So we have all grown up in some sense with the trauma of partition, but we really did not have to look so much back in the past. I mean, if we really, if it had to be a film about partition, then it would probably not be so relevant in today's times.
And I see parallels between your director's statement about your own personal feelings about the current administration and the decades old sort of geopolitical conflicts in partition. Like the painter himself, he is somebody that wants to seek some sorts of coexistence with his art, right? The mixture of like different styles and themes is a reflection of coexistence. What kind of, in particular, is there a particular political situation that you would like to comment on specifically, or is it just something more broad in your view?
It was broad, but we're heading towards a situation like this. So, in fact, after I made the film, and while this was in post production, and just before COVID hit the country, the government had proposed a citizenship law, which was considered very which was considered to be dividing the country on very religious lines. So it was it just so happened that the atmosphere of intolerance in the country had come to such a boil that that something like this was bound to happen. And we had a lot of protest against the citizenship law. In fact, for the first time, marginal communities, student communities had sort of started to come together against the present establishment, which is actually a very popular establishment, and it certainly was at that point of time. And then COVID happened, and then because COVID overtook everything, we really, I mean, this drama is yet to play out in the country, but it just sort of very easily resonated with what was to happen in the country in just a few months' time.
Thank you. I have a few specific questions, a few more questions about each of your films. For Signal, I found it very interesting that even though you and A New Normal both use technology to bridge that personal gap between the characters' families, the desert location is so vast, so broad, so abstract. It really forces everybody to project a little bit into that setting. What process did you guys have to go through in order to secure such a location, and what really made you fall in love with that setting?
Well, to be honest, we picked this location because I think it is really accessible, like during pandemic, because it's almost impossible to get like permit or yeah, I think getting permit is the biggest issue. And I think we want a place that is very out there and isolated to also like, yeah, like because it's like a game setting. So like almost like surreal, and realistic. And so we filmed there actually, I think like 2 years ago for our personal project as well. And then it just tripped, and like that's the perfect place for this story. It's so far away, nobody's there. We have skeleton crew. We can definitely make it happen. And there are so many interesting art installation. Like there's literally like a spaceship right there. Yeah, so we show it in the film as well. So I think it matched like the VR game setting perfectly. Well, that's why we picked that location.
Thank you. For Getsudo and 100 Joys, you guys both had to interview different people over the course of filming your projects. What was the most surprising detail that you guys took away from this time, getting to know the community and really understanding their stories? In a few words, I think we have to wrap up. So,
sure.
Yeah.
What was so interesting? The interview with Mr. Chung was the first time I had conducted an interview in a language that I did not myself speak. So I was very lucky to have the producer and the cinematographer both spoke Cantonese, and he spoke a sort of more rural dialect of Cantonese. So with that, it was just kind of an amazing thing to be able to learn about this amazing history that he had like 30 years with this neighborhood, that he moved here. He had learned the art of barbecuing meat like back in China that he brought here with him. But also what was really interesting is that a number of these interviewees, they moved in and out of the neighborhood. So, they grew up there, they moved away, they moved back, they moved away, and they moved back, is that even when they moved back, they still consistently returned to the neighborhood, and most of them still currently live there now. So it was just kind of really wonderful to see how strong the community was there, about how close knitted it was even till today. So that was kind of wonderful. Go ahead, Kacia.
I'll be quick as well. So I just interviewed Brian Quito. I wanted to keep it very kind of a narrow story in that way. And I think the one thing that I remember when he talked about the sign in his interview, that there's a sign that was, there when his grandfather owned the store, and they took it to Heart Mountain and brought it back with them. It's the only thing that stayed as a through line. That was the moment that I was like, oh, that's why this place feels so magical. Like there's something kind of magical about that sign that he felt, and I think permeates the place. And when we're talking about the place we occupy, there was something really special about that sign, that when he said that line, I was like, okay, this film is going to work.
I thank you both for responding. I still have so many questions, but we are at the end of our time together. Thank you all for joining us for this conversation. If you like, we can you guys can give us any personal social media, any social media accounts, any personal projects that you guys might be working on down the road, so we can all support you. Also, Vari, would you like to start?
My social media account is at Supernova Design Inc. And currently we're working on some projects that we can't discuss, but once we start, looking for support, you guys will hear it there. So yeah, if you want to sort of follow us, then at Supernova Design Inc. on Instagram is where we'll be at.
Thank you. And you?
You're asking our personal, on Instagram?
Any public social media, anything you want to promote, that is fine.
I just mostly post my work on my social account, website as well. So it is the same, just under my name, Annie Ju. That's my on Instagram. Yeah, you can find me there.
Thank you. Kacia?
Yeah, you can follow the film on Facebook, Forget-to-Do Film. And then on Instagram, I'm slightly more complicated, _Kacia.rose_, because there's multiple Kacia Roses.
Thank you. Amanda?
On Instagram, I am at Amanda A.M. Wong, and I'm also in a all East Asian queer alt rock band called Cutsleeve, and you can find us at Cutsleeve on Instagram. A couple upcoming projects coming up, but one that I'm really excited about is called Roses Flowers. It is a short film. It will be one of I haven't done narrative films in a while, so it'll be going back to that. And it's about the friendship of two girls in the late 90s in Indonesia. So we are currently casting. If you know any Indonesian folks who would love to be in contact, please send them my way. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Kaushal?
Hi, so my company is called Luminoso Pictures, and on Instagram you can find them at Luminoso Pictures India. I think Facebook would probably be the same. And I guess Twitter maybe. Just try looking for Luminoso Pictures and you'll find it. I'm making my next feature, which is also going to be produced by the same company. It's a family comedy set in Goa in the early 90s.
Thank you. And Lays?
I love this session. Thank you so much for not only having us and allowing to support us, our future projects. You can find me on Instagram by searching Lays 123456. Super basic and fundamental because it's easy to find. Working on a couple projects, but one of it is my thesis film. I'm actually still a student at the moment. It's a Southern Gothic thriller called Karen, and you'll be able to find more information through my Instagram.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for sharing, and I hope to see you guys down the road. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
touche.